everything that is was once imagined, because you can't contrive something new. You can't. You can only contrive something that's already been. So anything that you want to new create, or to create a new, you must utilize your imagination. And actually, every moment of every day, we actually utilize our imagination. But too often, our imagination goes into imagining, you can't achieve that, I can't achieve this. So there is no lack of imagination. There's just a simple misuse or misunderstanding of it. Either way, even the misuse and the misunderstanding of it will lead you to, when you wake up and become present, it will lead you to imagination in the way we want to use it, which in the way we have the choice or the control of it. All right. So to start off, I always like to start with like kind of like a visual meditation to kind of, because me talking about imagination or anything does not teach anybody anything. The experience of the utilization of it actually teaches. So if you want to learn meditation, talking about it can set you forth, but the only way to learn something is by doing. So meditation teaches meditation, love teaches love, abundance teaches abundance, so forth and so on. So what I'm going to have you do today is gently close your eyes. All right? And I'm going to have you all drift into your own place. I'm just going to place settings. So imagine yourself walking into a bubble. All right? Now picture your physical body inside that bubble. And notice the weightness. And you're actually observing it from the outside the bubble. So you're observing the bubble with your physical body in it. And notice the weightlessness of it, but yet it's supported by the bubble. And as you float, you come to an understanding and thought of lightness. So as you lighten up your body and quiet the mind, now imagine yourself doing what it is you would like to do or prefer to do in this state, in this bubble. Allow the bubble to drift up. Now as you base in that feeling, hold on to the feeling. Not so much on the incidentals of what got you there, although the visuals are definitely a point to starting, but don't hold on to the feeling. And now notice the bubble represents the soul. There isn't a soul in us, but we are in the soul, and we are the soul. So we are the bubble and the corporeal body that lies in it. Now start to imagine wherever you want to take this bubble. Take it up, take it lateral. Now what we're going to do is land the bubble. And as it lands, it comes back to the earth. Take your index finger and poke it. And as it bursts, open your eyes. Now, in order to do that, you had to use your imagination. I just guided you, and I did a very simple guided imagination, but you saw yourself floating in a bubble. Have you ever floated in a bubble before? Again, that's what you just did. So now, if you want to achieve something for the sake of setting forth the experience of it, because that's what we do. We take the imagination to set it forth to do something, but the empirical truth of why we do that is to see what the experience is going to happen. Just like when we go to a movie, we don't want to know what's going to happen. We want to know the theme, so the imagination sets the theme forth into which we're going to go. But we don't want to know what's going to happen. Actually, the better the movie, the more surprised we are at the end. So why would you want to know what's headed for in life? You don't. We think we do. We think we want to be stagnant and still in the moments when we feel good. But then that's what creates, that's what ruins the crop, so to speak. You got to let things grow, cut it down for the next batch to germinate and come up. So once we start to understand that the fact you were able to imagine yourself in a bubble floating, can you imagine yourself running a multi-million-dollar corporation? Can you imagine yourself living in the woods in a cabin? And the answer is yes. And that's where in the previous talks, two of you weren't here, but I talked about one of the things that defeat us from what we want to do is thinking in the form of overthinking. So when we're thinking, and I'll go over this again quickly, because this is a huge part of it, it takes us away in the form of distraction from being presently moment. Imagination works only when we're in the moment to imagine. Otherwise, in the aspect of preferential. Otherwise, it's working, keeping us away from where we want to be. So when we actually start to slow down the thinking is when we become present, and in the present moment, we can set forth the direction in which we want to move, just to set forth the journey to experience what's going to happen. And when we remain present, there will be no surprises come along the way. Most people look at things, that shouldn't have happened, it shouldn't have rained today. And the truth is, empirically, we never know what's supposed to happen. We're not supposed to know what's happening. But the anticipation of this has to happen in order for me to get here is what takes us off guard. And that's what takes us from this present moment. Now, we were programmed to try to anticipate, and we were told this shouldn't happen. So in that place, or in the interim of doing that from this place to that, forgive yourself for anticipating what you think is supposed to happen. So what? Who cares? But as we get better at it, you'll realize you don't need to know what's going to happen. The left part of the brain, in the form of like neuroscience, they know this now, actually picks up information based off of experiences. So my experience, I talked about this earlier. I went to school when I was a kid. I learned the English language. I learned to speak. I learned how to articulate. Not as good as most people, but I did. So when I'm present, my left brain is engaged fully, but it's not thinking. And then what happens, I open up my right brain. So even these words coming out weren't preempted. I didn't write anything down. The only thing I knew I was going to talk about was imagination. I didn't know what direction I was going to go in until I sat down. But because through my experience, I learned to speak the English language and certain words and certain phrases, and I had certain experiences, used certain analogies, the left brain engages that in order to fulfill the energy that's coming through to explain it. That's what we want to do all day long. You want to stay in that state. Meditation puts you in that place. But a lot of times we look at meditation as a quiet time in the morning, quiet time in the evening, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if we can look at every moment of every day as that place of your spiritual practice, you'll end up meditating less in the morning and less at night, because meditation is a pause of life. So you press the pause button to step out. So you watch a movie, you need to get something, you pause the movie. But when you're fully equipped to watch the movie from beginning to end, you don't need the pause button. But knowing you have a pause button makes you feel good. You know, if you're in a movie theater, it goes 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the great scenes come, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like, that distracts you from what's gonna happen in the end. So having meditation, actually knowing you have it, and knowing it's there, when you get really good, you seldom have to use it. And if you do have to use it, there's nothing wrong with it. But what I'm talking about is staying present and utilizing the imagination in the present moment all day long. And when we get distracted from it, so what? Let go. Because when you let go of thought, the natural swing is right here. Just like a pendulum, when you let go of the energy of the pendulum, it swings here. When you pull a cork under the water, when you let go, the natural state here. It's the natural state of a human being, due to contrary belief, is peace. When you let go of everything, you literally fall into peace. You don't have to work yourself to peace. You don't have to work towards it. You don't have to move towards it. It is your natural state. That's why when you fall asleep, you're at peace. So it's about learning to let go and allow. And this is a concept that we weren't taught. We were taught to go out there and grab the bull by the horns. And then you sit back when you get older, like, why would you grab the bull by the horns? What's the purpose? Why can't we just let the bull run and watch it? And people were trying to control the world, to the physical world outside of them, for the lack of the control inside. So in this paradoxical state that we're coming into right now, the earth is waking up to this. It slowly flipped. It was almost as if the horse was pushing the carriage. And if you've never seen a horse pull the carriage, you would never think of putting the horse in front of the carriage. But then you entered into a village and you saw that. And even if you saw it, you're going to ask questions. You're not going to just do it right away. And over time, you see the efficiency of allowing the horse pulling the carriage. And that becomes the center part of where we are. It seems paradoxical to the old way we did in the other village, but yet, once we see it, it makes sense. And then from that moment on, even what I'm talking about right now, maybe 20 years, 30 years from now, the evolution of even the deeper understanding what I'm talking about will simply expand. It never ends. So even what I'm talking about right now is just a minutia of what we're about to explore. But before we get beyond this step, you go there, and that's the quantum leaps we're going to make. But imagination right now is one of the greatest tools we have. Yes, it's fun to just imagine haphazardly about stuff, but when you actually know, the imagination generates a vibrational frequency to place the state where we are, almost how a GPS, I want to go somewhere, I've never been there, but I have an understanding what it's about there, so I put it in and I'm going to Malibu. Now I've never driven from here to Malibu, so I put it in there. And then when I come back to this place, I simply stay present and follow the GPS. Make a right, do a left. I don't try to get all the bits of information out of it right away, because if it was someone how to conjure up all the information for me in a moment, it says, well, in this journey you're going to take 50 rights and 30 lefts. But that doesn't do me any good here. Because when do I make the right and when do I make the lefts? Which comes first? So we only need each bit of information as we're in. That's why when you're present, all you'll ever need to know, you will know in the present moment. When we think we need to know more, we get distracted from the very place that's feeding the information. It's like if I was busy arguing with someone as I was driving and I didn't hear the GPS, the next thing I'm going to hear is recalculate. But even when we don't listen, the universe is still recalculating us. So it's not a big deal that you got distracted along the way. It isn't. It really isn't. You know, there were times when you first do it, you get lost, but you know, I say distraction is the art of discovery as well. And you usually discover not to get distracted. But when we start to really conceptualize this and think about it, it becomes us. Just like if you've never been to the gym before, it seems very difficult and laborious, but it's worth getting to the results in which you want. But when you've been doing it for a while, it's not even the results that will come a week or a month later. It's the result in the moment in which you want it. And that's how we're meant to live. We're not meant to meditate so I can make it through the day. You're meditating for that moment of meditation. You're engaging in a conversation with someone for that moment of conversation, not to get somewhere. That is the means to the end, and everything is in that. You don't use that, because when you overlook that, you're always in this anxious feeling, you're never there, you're never there, you're never there, you're never there, you're never there. You're always there. And when you're there, the things that you actually ask for will start to show up, or the perspectives of it, or the coordination of it, actually see it. And it's kind of actually fun watching processes, because you can't tell a story about something that came to you instantly. But you can tell the story how you started on this day, and 30 days later I lost 60 pounds, or whatever time. But if you just say, I want to lose 30 pounds, and 2 minutes later you lose it, there's no story to tell. So we actually, in the process of learning right now as human beings, the process is the place of learning. Setting forth to get to something that creates the process is an indication that we got there, so the next place comes. So that's why, the name of my book is Enjoy the Ride. When we literally learn to enjoy the ride, enjoy the process, that's where all the education is. Like again, we don't go to the movies and wait to the very end to watch the ending to try to understand what we've even seen. You must watch every part of the movie to understand why the ending was the ending. So most people want to jump ahead and get to where they want, and they become impatient. And I'm not an advocate of patience. I'm like, you should always be where you want to be. You're like, oh, I'm a very patient person. And I'm like, what time value do you hold to patience? You know, I'm patient up to an hour. Well, if someone that's patient up to 10 minutes is arbitrary as the hour. They're just not willing to stay there longer than 10 minutes. So, and again, these are just concepts I'm putting out there, because when you start to utilize your imagination, everything is possible. And then when you actually really absorb it in, you almost get to a point where the acquiring of it isn't necessary, but the paradox is you end up acquiring it because of the experience of it. So just like everything that comes, when something is coming, like in other words, if more money you want in your life, you have to get to the point where you're not even noticing it. Because typically everyone that marked off their successes had seemingly passed by the success in a period of time before they recognized they not just arrived, they went beyond it. Because when you get there, that stride of step was no different than the first one you took. You know, like I use this analogy a lot, but the first stride that you take at the base of Mount Everest is no different than the one you take at the top. It's no different, other than the psyche. But when you take one step at a time, but if I'm trying to think of the stride up at the top, I'm going to be frozen, I'm not going to be able to move. And this is why seemingly we do not allow ourselves to move in the direction of success. So what happens, our imagination becomes this lofty thing. But when I create an imagination and it generates a feeling and I get into that state, and when I'm present, my impulse might be to go get a cup of coffee. And if I don't think about it and question why a cup of coffee if I'm trying to start a business, and we don't know, you might go get a cup of coffee and you're there with a friend talking about it, and as you're talking about it, someone overheard it, that can aid you or direct you in that. And then you start to see the synchronicity. So the imagination creates the platform or the blue line in which the GPS does, but then you come down and experience everything along the way. And that's the magnificence of life. It isn't necessarily getting to the end, or getting to the end of it is part of it, so you don't exclude it. You know, the destination, I say, the journey's better than the destination. And I'm like, no, it's not. The destination and journey, the destination and the journey itself are one complete kit. You can't make one better than the other. The journey becomes, before the, it's previous to the destination, but it's not better. Once you start thinking one's better than the other, then you never get to the fulfillment of it, and then you get tired of it, and you wake up one day, it's like, I never achieved anything other than the running around in the circle. So learn to let go of thoughts, and when they come, because overthinking will teach you to stop overthinking. So don't double down and say I shouldn't have overthought, because then you're just going in a vicious cycle. When you recognize yourself overthinking, guess what you're not doing? Is overthinking. When you recognize yourself doing something wrong, you're no longer doing something wrong in the belief in it's being done wrong, because it's not really wrong, it's just an experience. Once you recognize something, that's what enlightenment is called. It doesn't mean now I have to and do the work and stuff. No, that is the work. And if every day you can recognize, in every moment you can recognize you do that, eventually you stop recognizing it and you do this. And then what you notice is the fluidity and the ease of life. And things come to you, align, and you move in that direction. And then when you get to what we call the goal, you go back to the imagination. What am I going to do now? It's never been invented. Well, I'm going to close my eyes and see what we can go from here. And then another process is created. And the process, like all these aren't just some random thing. It literally is to learn and build from our experiences. You know, we have strands of DNA in our body that haven't even been triggered. Like a lot of times when I talk about these type topics, subjects, a lot of people that never heard it before will start like nodding their head, yeah. And it's because they were listening, they were engaged, and it literally triggered something in their DNA that they already knew. We all know this. It's like we know what we should do, but we forget that we should do it. So the more we actually engage, it then becomes our practice, and then we become beacons for others. You know, the more spiritual as individuals come and the more present we become, we have the ability to bring more people into presence. Like, you notice, there are more people on the planet now working out and getting healthy, which then creates more people working out and getting healthy. It double downs on it, because when people see the effort or the work into it, and actually even working out now seems effortless more than it did years ago, and more people are doing it, more people are doing it. For like just the sake of this whole setting is to raise the vibration, not just of every individual here, but to raise the vibration and the standard of how we look at stuff throughout the universe. And there are ways of measuring it, but we'll never know the effect, just like the butterfly wings, we'll never know what the effect of it was. And when we continuously return back to this place, it becomes who we are. Because eventually we won't have to even show up at a place like this. We'll be doing this in our everyday discussion. And there will be a day we won't have to do this, but in the meantime, it's available, raise the information. But you don't have to wait till Wednesdays, or like I said last time, Sundays. You can do it every day. But by all means, those other things are good. Because right now in this room, there isn't too many distractions, so it's easy to stay present, engaged in what I'm saying. And it's easy for me to stay engaged because there's nothing else. But part of our practice is going out there and staying engaged while this thing's going on. This is why we marvel over stories like, or TV show, or movies like James Bond. James Bond could be sitting on the beach drinking a martini, or he could be strapped to a chair over a shark tank, and his disposition's the same. It really is. It's like, you know, he drinks the martini like this, and he's over the shark tank like this. But the reason we like to watch that is because we want to emulate that no matter what's going on. We want to be in that place. But we don't know the joy of the energy running through him, but his response and reaction is very similar. Because at some level, he knows he's going to get out of it. You know? And this is why we engage in that. Now, can you imagine James Bond was a complete, like, screaming, like, would you watch somebody, like, run down and talk, you know, call down? For one, nothing would get done. And the reason we like that, because we know we are already that. The reason we like, and envyiness of other people just means that you deep down inside know you can do it, but then you have a belief that says you can't. And that's where we create enviness and jealousy. But that's what they're really telling you. Because if you didn't know, if you couldn't do it, you would never be jealous of it. But when we actually turn it around, it can show us how that we can do that. That's why we watch that. You know, we try to act very present. And James Bond has to be present when he's hanging over a shark, or else he's dead. You know, hence why people like to mountain climb. The higher you get up the mountain, the less you're thinking. You have to stay focused. You know, and then someone hits the ground, what happened? They were thinking. Overthinking. Now, we laugh, but at some point there's going to be that. It's like, what happened? They were overthinking. You know, why did he get sick? He was overthinking. It's like, do you have any other diagnosis here? No, the truth is we were overthinking. And that's the major diagnosis. Now, the world's not ready to hear that. You know, we're chuckling over it because we know that. But that really is the fundamental reason of all this destruction that we see around us. But we can walk into the world and not even have to change the world. Because if I have to change the world, in order for me to do it, I am then creating the very problem I want. You know, we look at the history of humanity, and some of the West would say when they came over to the United States, I believe there was this loving, caring idea they had, but when they saw Native American Indians, they literally thought they were living like savages and they could be living better because they were already living in castles. So they went and convinced them that they were living wrongly. And then what happened is the destruction within that came. But when someone does something and realizes they mess up, they tend to get very defensive, and then the war broke out. And that really is it. We don't know. If they came over here and didn't think their way was better, it wouldn't have happened. But it happened so we can learn from it, not to do that. I don't know enough to tell Karen or anyone in here what they should do. But sometimes I do. And then I just end up apologizing because I don't know. Because I don't know. I can only know what it is I know when I'm present in that moment. So when I'm present in the moment, and if someone asks me a question, I would say you have the answer because you have the question. It's a complete kit. Now when you have a question, just like a quarter has a heads and a tail, you must flip it to get to the answer. So you must step out of the aspect of the question in order to find the answer. So a conversation with someone engaging can lure you out of it. I could point you out of it, but I can't give you the answer because the answer is contained within your field, not in mine. Just like if I wanted to go to Santa Monica, I've never been there, and I put my GPS because I don't trust it. I call my buddy up and I say, hey, can you put this address in? He puts the same address you did in. And he's like, what does it say? Well, it says make a left out of the neighborhood. He's like, I knew it. He's like, why? Mine says make a right. Well, we don't realize he's 5 miles the other way in the road, so the first initial reaction out of the gate would not be the same as mine. That's why we can never give advice in specifics. We can say just the GPS is, listen to it, follow it. My GPS is in a different location, that's why it's not going to get you. Even though the destination is the same exact thing, we think the answer should be the same for everybody. No. Everyone has their own road. There's 7 billion people on the planet. They'll all arrive at this place differently. I'm just here to say everyone has it already contained in them. And when we stop thinking and fall into a natural state of presence, the information comes to you one step at a time. That's how all the great artists, musicians did it. And even now, like you're starting to see, like when someone writes a beautiful song or something, they get to the point where they're almost embarrassed to take credit for it because they don't know how they did it. Because if they actually did it, they'd be able to do it time after time after time after time. And they can, but once they do it once, they start thinking about it, and then the second album sucks. Because they didn't think about it the first time. What did we do wrong? Well, we weren't thinking about it. We were happy and we were just playing. That's like the same old story. And then when they get back to the producing stuff or writing, like you can't think about writing, you just write. Now, I learned how to write as a kid, so my left brain is engaged to write or type. That's the function of it, and that's it. We don't think about the story. We sit silent, and the story comes to us. All right? But the imagination is the first component in moving in the direction. Without the imagination, well, let's see where we land. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But when you're trying to get somewhere, you need to know where you're going. Imagination will put you there. It will raise your frequency to it. So if thinking about Hawaii and possibly moving there generates a frequency of what it'd be like to live there, you then have to stop, because the human mind wants to say, well, how am I going to do it? I can save X amount of dollars this month. And no, stop that. That will talk you out of it. Thinking will talk you out of anything. Just hold on to the feeling. And when you hold on to the feeling, you become present. And then observe. Don't search for or look, but you'll see they'll come in front of you. You'll start seeing the synchronistic values of things coming to you. And that's when you're like, it's working. Just like the GPS says, make a right. And it'll tell you, and it will tell you, it doesn't tell you right when to do it. It tells you about 500, in 500 feet, you'll be making a right. So it gives you ample time to respond to it. So when those things come in it, you actually respond as best you can at the moment. Don't think you should respond to any better or different, because that's thinking. And that's what throws a wrench in it. So as we move from this moment in time, set forth and imagine it. You could even do it every day. Imagine what it will be like to get to a beautiful day, and then drop the incidentals of how. Most of us wake up in the morning, it will be a good day if this happens, that happens, and you get to the end of the day, how was it? Hey, it wasn't bad. You got 5 out of 10, you know? Well, some people get 9 out of 10, but that one thing, you know. But why did that one thing upset you? Because in your mind, it was not supposed to happen. But we don't know enough to know what's supposed to happen. The imagination is just to get us to move in a direction. Like, I'm not going to move unless I know I already have a setting in my GPS. Sit in my driveway, put it in, then I move. So the imagination is the momentum behind the experience and the journey in which we travel. Use it wisely. That's all the wisdom for today. Any questions? No? All right. So yeah, just, practice that like moment to moment, day to day. And what happens is when you actually understand the mechanism of it, you'll actually utilize it better. Just like a tool. And somebody that never picked up a hammer before, saw a hammer, was never introduced to a hammer, God knows what they would do with it. And then someone says, oh, this is how you use it. Oh, the efficiency becomes better. That's it. So the imagination, to me, is one of the greatest tools, if not the greatest tool we have. We just didn't fully understand it. So now it's time to open up the manual, which is already encoded in our DNA. And the imagination is just to raise your vibration and let the feeling get you present, and the information will come. And you'll know when it's there. You'll know to respond to it. Like I told a story a while back, so you probably all heard this, but one day I was running around, it was on a Monday, and I knew how to do something, but I forgot what it was. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go to the movies. I have time before my son comes home from school and Karen get off work. So as I was setting out to go to the movie theater, I'm driving, and a car pulls up to me, and on the side of the car, it had a sticker on the window for the Guitar Center. And that was the thing I had to do. I had to go to Guitar Center to pick up PA equipment. So I scrapped going to the movie theater, and I went to the Guitar Center to get what I needed. So it's funny, and I recognized the fact that the universe is like, okay, you can't hear this, go to the movie. So I went to the movie, and along the way to the movie, I noticed the sticker at the Guitar Center. I'm like, that's it. So I'm like an episode of Dumb and Dumber here. But this is how life works. Because if I really was fully engaged, I would have known right away to go to the Guitar Center. But you know what? The universe is always kicking you into play. And so I laughed at it. So I didn't like, should I go to the movie? No. I dropped the movie, and I don't even know what movie I was going to. And I went to Guitar Center. To me, because I recognized it, it was like I couldn't wait to tell people. And people were like, really, that's exciting? Like, yeah, it's exciting. But that's what happens. And that's when you get excited at that. That's when life becomes beautiful. To people that are overly intellectual will seem like simpletons. But yet, we get everything. Forrest Gump's one of my favorite stories. Because one of the most unassuming human beings, or characters in that show, but he's the only one that got everything he wanted without even asking for it. He never asked for it. And even like one of the greatest scenes when he's on the ship with Captain Dan, and Captain Dan looks at him, did you ever find Jesus? And he says, I didn't know we were looking for him. Because he was already there, wherever there was. He didn't need the intellectual study of it, because that can get in our way. I'm not saying, get rid of it, but engage it. The left part of the brain is magnificent, but when you misuse it, it's like brushing your teeth with a hammer. You're not going to have any teeth left. Use the hammer for what it's used for. So when you understand what they're used for, you don't misuse it, and then everything then works out beautifully. And it's funny telling the story. And that's kind of like, my shtick is telling stories and metaphors. I also like when things happen too. But that's kind of my journey, and I get often that some people, that's not what they want to do. But by no means can we all travel that same road. We're all one unified field. And if we're all doing something the same, we simply cancel each other out. We aren't here to cancel each other out. We're here to collaborate. All right? So, go forth and collaborate. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.